Good morning, bon dia, buenos dias. Welcome to our opening session this morning. We're going to have a very interesting conversation on inclusive multilateralism. And joining me up here to have this talk is María Fernanda Espinosa, former president of the UN General Assembly. She is from Quito in Ecuador. And Emilia Saiz, of the United Cities and Local Governments. She's the executive director. You may have already seen her during the Congress. So let's get started. Good morning, ladies. Thank you very much indeed for joining us for this crucial conversation. Can I start by asking you both, starting with you, María Fernanda, is the current multilateral architecture dead, and should it be buried? Is it not working for us?
I would say absolutely not. I think that we cannot live without international cooperation, without international solidarity, without international law. That's what multilateralism does. It's 2 or 3 or more countries coming together to cooperate, to collaborate, to establish agreements. So we cannot live without it, especially if you look at the current very challenging global scenario. Climate change, inequalities, global health cannot find responses if it's not through multilateral cooperation.
But arguably, these multilateral institutions have failed us because we're not getting the answers, are we, to climate change, as witnessed by COP26. We're not getting the answers to social inequality and so on. Emilia, I mean, you represent the local in this landscape, don't you? Your mission basically is to push for a greater contribution, a greater representation of the local on the international multilateral stage. How's that going?
It's going. And they cannot deny that we need to be there. But we still, I think the multilateral system is not doing worse than any other format of governance that we have. I mean, our governance mechanisms, be it at local, at national, or at international level, they are obsolete. We are at the moment where we need to transform them all. And the multilateral system is maybe the one that is holding on to less innovation. They are holding strong to the historical background that they have and the nation-states idea that they could come together in the League of Nations and make peace. This is just no longer the case. And so they are now understanding that the type of innovation that is going on in cities in our constituency is the one that they need to actually make things work. So they cannot avoid us. Do they want us at the table? No, no.
Let's come back to that. María Fernanda, you're a veteran, of course, of the multilateral arenas. You've been the president of the General Assembly. You've been a foreign minister for Ecuador. You've been at the United Nations in Geneva as the ambassador. Clearly, reform is needed. Can you outline where you think specifically reform needs to take place and how quickly?
Well, things are happening, Martine. It's not that everybody is waiting and sitting comfortably. Number one, we just had, I would say, a groundbreaking report coming out called Our Common Agenda, which in my opinion is a groundbreaking report, basically speaking to how you regain trust in multilateral institutions. And the capital of multilateralism is the United Nations. Trust building, inclusion, and here I'm totally here with Emilia. The voice of local and regional governments is absolutely vital for the revitalization of the multilateral system. Implementation, the implementation deficit, accountability, transparency, and a buy-in from citizens worldwide. Sometimes the UN is here, sometimes citizens' expectations are down here. The midway, the way to make sure that there is social ownership on the decisions that the UN take is through regional and local governments. Subsidiarity is the best way to regain trust in the system. But we have a door open, it's our common agenda, and I think it's a call to everybody, to every single space for government power and decision making to make the difference. So we are of course, experiencing multiple crises that are interconnected, but we have also the opportunity for this moment of reinvention, of innovation in the multilateral system.
Absolutely. Emilia, you were saying that there is, or you suggested that there is a certain resistance perhaps to the admission of local...
I was saying it.
Okay,
not
you were
suggesting.
saying...
We see it every day, yeah.
So there's a resistance then to the representation, the greater representation of local interests and issues. Where do you think specifically within the multilateral system do you want a seat at the table? Is it the
At the General Assembly of the United Nations? Oh, yeah. That's where we're heading
the
for.
Security Council, peace and security affects...
Well, look, I mean, I don't know about the Security Council. I think the Security Council itself needs reform. So
that's another debate, I think, isn't it?
We would need a different session for that. But I do think that the General Assembly needs the participation of cities, of other spheres of governments, and I would dare say other stakeholders, to sit there and to provide regular reports and to inform countries, because let us remember that the multilateral system is the countries. It's not an abstract thing. I mean, it's the countries around the table. To inform countries about topics that they are dealing with detached and with some distance from the domestic fights at political level. You need spaces where you can actually detach from the day-to-day politics and look at the broader picture and take far-reaching intergenerational decisions that are not linked with powers and posts and these kind of things. And that's why I am a believer of the multilateral system. And if you ask me, the first time I met María Fernanda in her post there at the United Nations in a very nice setting. She received us, which was groundbreaking. I went to New York just to have lunch with her. I told her that I felt mayors around the world are the most multilaterally driven actors.
I'm convinced.
They believe in multilateralism. Have you seen them at COP, these poor people that couldn't even get into the main meeting and they were all there just trying to influence what was happening? So I am a believer, and I think any person that is in touch with community needs, it's a believer of multilateralism, because you need those spaces. Politics are good, we have them, it's the best system we have. We wouldn't be doing well without politics, but we need another dialogue space to shape policies that are greater than us at this moment.
All right, a question to both of you. María, Fernanda first. National representation, governments represent interests, national interests. How different, therefore, would local representation be? The mayors of cities, they would also represent interests as well. Isn't this more about trying to remove narrow interests and have a bit more commonality? I mean, would this reform that we're suggesting, would this remove those rather narrow interests?
I would say quite the opposite, because one of the problems of the multilateral narrative is that decisions are taken at the top and then do not make their way through, and the only way, again, to have the ownership, to overcome the implementation deficit is through the social ownership. And the only way is to have local governments, local spaces of power speak, back and forth. It's the only way. And let me give you a very concrete example. Can we really curb climate change without 60% of the emissions or more that are produced in cities? That's when the dialogue needs to happen. Are we going to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic without having the local sphere of government taking the right decisions? So this is a survival need. Yeah. It's the way to humanize multilateral decisions. So. And I think that we have won, in a way, the narrative of this inclusive, participatory, multilateral system for the 21st century. Everybody would agree with what Emilia was saying, but when it comes to really take the decision, bring in local and regional governments to the table, then the problem starts, because it's a power sharing process. Not every state is ready for that, but at the same time, I think that it is so much needed. So I think that there is a window of opportunity. This window of opportunity is it's in our hands. It's not only the responsibility of these world leaders, it is the responsibility of society, of civil society, of academia. It is the responsibility of UCLG, and believe me that they're super present, very active in this. I would say in this struggle that is worthwhile. We cannot have a United Nations that was designed 76 years ago, because the scenario has changed. The geopolitics have changed. The economy and globalization has changed. We are more interdependent. We're more interconnected. And we are suffering a legitimacy, implementation, and trust crisis that we need to overcome. And the best way to do it is to bring in local voices, local governments, regional governments to have a say at the table.
Emilia.
Yeah, I wanted to take the same question.
Yes, please do.
Because understand me well, it is true that, my organization has a long history. We were created, the original organization was created in 1913, before the League of Nations, right? Before the wars. Before the United Nations were even a concept, right? But then when we revitalized the organization in 2004, after 8 years of negotiations on how they were going to do this, the different networks, we were created as the United Nations of Cities. That's how they described us. But now I think we are rethinking, and understand me well, we don't want to substitute national governments in multilateralism. If cities would take the same roles as national governments, they would be making the same mistakes. What we want is for cities to take the responsibility of informing the system of what the communities want, how the neighborhoods are shaping. What are the real needs? What does urbanization era mean? And it is not about the big cities. The urbanization era is about the medium-sized cities and the relationship between those cities and the rural areas. It is not about the big city mayors only. They are the drivers of the change. They are the ones that can be the interlocutor. There is nobody that can ignore whatever London or Lagos or New Delhi is saying. Nobody can ignore that, but they should not be repeating the same thing. So we are not asking for, we have an assembly of a World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments, which the United Nations has actually met, and we convene it once a year so that we can do an interlocution. But subsidiarity is taking care of business at the closest level possible of those people affected by the business.
Absolutely. But the real picture of politics is that it's a competitive, ugly business. How far would national authorities be prepared to effectively cede a certain amount of influence and power to local or regional bodies?
But Martine, you touched on something before very important, the issue of national interest. How do you define national interest? And how national interest is opposed to local interest?
Exactly.
I would like to give you a very concrete example. We have a human rights and development toolkit called the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. What is the common interest? The common interest and the national interest is to fight poverty, to fight inequalities, it's gender equality. It's access to safe water and sanitation. It is to curb climate change and protect the most vulnerable.
María Fernanda, sorry to interrupt, but
yes.
This thought of, is local government not government?
It is, of course. And
Yes, we are government. It's part of the structure, right?
yes, and
It's a small
elected
step.
by the people.
Exactly,
You know.
and that's where the interest that she's describing, it's part and parcel of this. Do you picture any national government that does not talk to the local governments or does not try to influence the local governments? Why aren't we doing that for the global agendas?
Yeah, but in here, Martine, I think we should not be naive. We are living a world of polarization, of fragmentation, of either you're my friend or you're my enemy. And the best way, perhaps, to bridge polarization is through dialogue, a multi-layered dialogue, at the very local level. Now it's become fashion to say we need to restore the social contract. No. And yes, we do need to restore the social contract. The best way to restore the social contract is to transform the relationship between society, the economy, and politics. And the vehicle, the thread, is through subsidiarity to the most local level of dialogue. And social inclusion and social participation sometimes mean, they are, ¿cómo se dice? Banalizado. Taken for granted.
Yes.
Okay. But it's not. I mean, we need to go back to the basics. And the basics is local diplomacy, the possibility of dialogue and inclusion.
Okay, following that logic then, therefore also deserving of a seat at the table will be civil society in its various
Well, that's what I'm
its
saying.
various forms.
No, I
Yes.
fully agree with this, and this is why I was making the point that we are government. I mean, the constituency that I represent is government. It's part of government. Now, is this part of government that is closest to the communities? I feel that if, systems do not change overnight. They don't. And if they do, sometimes it doesn't last very long, right? So, but if we change the system, if we include this level of government in the system, I am convinced that the next thing, and with that thing, is putting communities also at the table, the other stakeholders. I fully agree with that. And I want to come back to your question on the power struggle. Yeah, yes. There will be less seats. Yes. But you are a woman, we are all, the three of us, and aren't we struggling for that? It is the same type of fight. We're changing models. And we are at a moment where the models that we need to change are so many at the same time, at a moment of crisis, where our own subsistence, the survival of the species is at stake. Well, we need to change it from the bottom up. The sacrifices that not only this generation is making, but that we are asking the next generations to make, are so big that the only way to do it is people are convinced that that's the way to go.
You're absolutely right. This is something that has I've been picking up throughout the Congress, in fact, and that is that the time for incremental change is almost over. Antonio Guterres says, this is red alert. This is 1 minute to midnight, as Boris Johnson says. Incremental change is going to take time. This is time we don't necessarily have. So we need perhaps disruptive force. Disruptive force that is going to affect rapid change. I mean, is that something that's possible?
Well, I think that we have witnessed that, Martine, with the COVID-19. Humans are capable of transforming their daily lives, the way they behave, the way they interact with others, aren't we? In 24 hours now, we wear masks, social distancing, the quarantine process. I mean, all of that has changed the world of work, for example, and we are capable of adapting to an emergency. In the same way, I think that this red alert moment that humanity is living really deserves a transformation in the way we interact with others, in the way we do politics, in the way, we bring in the voice of people, especially of people. So it's very different to speak about climate change, talking about, the arithmetic of emissions, how many you're going to decrease, the coal, removing subsidies to fossil fuel, etc. When you bring, a victim, a climate refugee, a climate migrant, by the millions now, and if we don't take this seriously, there are going to be millions and millions of climate refugees around the world. The human face to the big challenges of humanity help. And in my opinion, the human face of global challenges, this human face dimension do happen at the level of local and regional governments, do happen in this subsidiarity ladder that we're talking about. And if you ask me, yes, we cannot afford incremental change. We need to really shape collectively a profound transformation in this relationship between society, the planet, and the economy, and of course, politics.
It seems very much as though we all agree, everybody here seems to agree. Is it happening? Is this kind of profound rewriting of multilateral?
Look, it's happening at many levels. I mean, if you walk around, I was not in Glasgow this time. I mean, I have been in all the other COPs. But when you talk about that, the same thing with generation equality. Everybody loves to talk about feminism and how many women there needs to be. But look around, the reality is not as optimistic as one might think. But we need to look at, at the decision-making table, you have a very traditional view of the world. But there is a whole legacy of actors that is thinking differently. I think this Congress is an example. You walk around and you see alternative thinking in this Congress. My constituency is thinking differently and trying to influence. I think that quick fix that we are looking for is changing the stakeholders at the decision-making table. And we need to push now. They need to do it. When Antonio Gutierrez met with a small delegation of mayors in Glasgow, and some of them were, they were my constituency, but also my members in United Cities and local governments, he said to them, we are doing a small, silent revolution. And I want you on my side. And that's what we want to do. And it's the civil society, and it is the mayors, it is people, different people sitting at the decision-making table. Understand me well. National governments are not doing everything wrong. They also need to deal with things. There are good things going as well. But there needs to be different people thinking about the same problems to deliver different solutions. That's all I'm saying. And science is also part of that. And how do you make sure that science, and we have science, a lot of science going outside of these doors, how do you make sure that science influences policy making? Through national government? No, no. It is at local level that you need to change that. And so if you are changing the solutions at local level, then you will be playing with different factors to define global policies.
All right, let's use COP26 as the best example because it's the most recent. Many critics of that entire process and the outcome was that there was far too much weight attached to commercial interests. Are commercial interests as powerful at the local level as they are at the national level, as we witnessed in Glasgow?
Well, I would say there is always this tension about how the private sector is going to come in, and have a say, but also have a responsibility. Let's talk about coal, Martine. Countries, very powerful countries, have said no more coal projects, okay? It so happens that 80% of the investment in coal come from private sources. So we need to have the private sector at the table, but a private sector that has responsibility over the planet, over future generations, over decent jobs. And I think that we have very good examples of that. And of course, I'm speaking about the global sphere, and perhaps Emilia can inform us better in what happens at the local level of government. But I would say the private sector has a big responsibility, and they have to be a part of this whole of society, a quick fix, profound structural change. Absolutely.
Look, multinationals have more power than countries right now. And this is a fact. And that happens at local level, at national level, and international level. This is a fact. Most of our data is owned by a private company, by 3 of them, in fact, not many more than that. So do they have influence at local level? Of course, a lot of influence. And who gives that power? We. We are quicker giving our data to Alibay and Amazon than to our municipality. If the municipality asks for data from us, then people are very hesitant to provide it. But we sell out our data every time we click the button and say buy. So this is a fact, but we are able to change the relationship. We are able, and this is going back to what we said yesterday at the plenary, we are able to define what kind of society we want, what kind of applications we need, what kind of technology and what kind of services we have. The only way to do that is restore the trust of the communities in the government, for the communities to feel that they are part of government. If we give enough competencies to governance to be, the sentinels of our interests, then we will be able to do that. In order to do this, we need to change the notion of citizenship. We need to relax on the borders. We need to link citizenship to a humanity-driven rights, a new generation of human rights that will also entail a different type of set of rights and obligations for the multinationals and the private sector. But we are all in this. I am private sector part of my time. I am public sector part of my time, and I am a citizen part of my time, and all of them combined together. I make this body. So that's how we are looking also at the multilateral system.
All right, well, let's have a look at the near future. The United Nations system is coming up for its centenary, and how would you like to see that moment in terms of change, and how is it likely to be, despite all of our requests, all of our submissions? How is it likely to be, despite all of that?
Well, Martine, institutions are human-made, isn't it? So we have the capacity to reshape them. I am a strong believer on a values-based, in a new culture of multilateralism. And some changes perhaps may happen quicker than others. But what I can tell you is that we cannot continue doing business as usual. It is simply not possible. If you look at the data from the Edelman Trust Barometer, yes, we see that I think it's 57% of citizens that do not trust their governments. In my region, in Latin America, 8 out of 10 people do not trust political parties. It's exactly what Emilia was saying. Recovered trust in the United Nations is the center, the beating heart of the multilateral system. It has to be retooled, rejuvenated. When we say inclusive network multilateralism, we have to qualify that with concrete actions. And one of the concrete actions is to have local and regional governments sitting at the table, interacting with member states, providing their views, their agendas, their contribution to, for example, the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, their contribution to fighting inequalities, what local governments are doing in terms of curbing the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. This is absolutely critical.
But we need help for that.
Yes, absolutely.
We need help of media. Have you ever heard from United Cities and local governments before, Martine?
No, I haven't, actually.
Okay, we need help. we need help. We need to have people going out there and telling that there is these networks that are trying to trigger change. And when we are at COP, we need to stop looking at those actors, not only United Cities and local governments, but also other actors, as mere, fun facts, which we are part of the 3 seconds, of footage, just to go directly to the big men that are sitting at the decision-making table. So transformation is something that we all do together, and I do see it. I fully agree with you, María Fernanda. I mean, things are happening, we are getting there, but we need the awareness raising of all of us to give to this kind of networks and these kind of thinkers the power to change things.
Is it through your organization? Do you have the possibility, the potential to increase citizen participation?
Bandana Shiva, the great
almost
feminist.
sidestepping national governments.
Yeah. Bandana Shiva yesterday in our meeting, we're meeting here, the World Council, this great feminist food systems rethinker. She said, you are the most democratic organization of the whole world. Do we think we are organized and have the potential to transform? Yes. We are convinced. And if we cannot do a good enough job, we can transform ourselves as well. It's about the type of actors that you involved in there. And I am certain that the community, organized civil society, can really team up with us to make the transformation for the multilateral system, as María Fernanda was describing.
And with this ever-increasing connectivity, doesn't that just improve the prospects of transformative change, does it?
I think absolutely. And the voices of younger generations have become so powerful. In Glasgow, they were in the streets putting pressure on their governments. And I think that's the way to go. Conscious, active citizenship that connects to the local government space. And we need young people, to trust their political system, their authorities, to go and vote. And when they vote, they understand that they're voting for someone that cares about
and that
the
is
future.
Accountable, for someone that
Exactly.
is accountable. So my answer to your question would be, sorry, María Fernanda, yes, we have that potential. Yes, we can make the difference as long as we remain accountable. And accountability, well, that we need to work on. But failure is not an option, is it?
Yeah,
So we need to
cannot
make it
afford, to fail again.
We need to make it
and
work.
I think let's grab the opportunity that we're giving. Let's make our common agenda report. It's not a boring bureaucratic thing. The Secretary General produces 400 reports every year. I can tell you that. But this is the one report that needs to be owned and acted upon by citizens, by local governments. So we have an opportunity. We have to grab the opportunity and make the transformation happen now. And the future starts today, starts here.
Ladies, thank you very much indeed. That was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
María Fernanda Espinosa, Emilia Saiz,
thank
you
you.
so much. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, ladies. I'm going to get on now with introducing our next session. But
Thank you.
you're welcome to go and have a coffee. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.